They told you the world is always there, like a stone cathedral unmoved by your presence, indifferent to your thoughts. They told you reality is hard and objective and separate from you. And you believed them because no one offered another vision. No one said that maybe the world isn't solid until you see it. That perhaps the act of perception is not passive but creative. That the eyes are not just windows but painters, and the canvas of reality remains blank until you arrive with your gaze, because the world doesn't exist the way you think. It does not until you look, not until you give it form with attention. You see things only become real when you engage them with awareness. And this is not a metaphor, this is quantum, this is human. This is how your mind shapes what you experience. Because if you don't see the tree in the forest, does it make a sound? Does it even exist to you? What happens to the parts of the world? You never think about the spaces you walk, past the faces you never notice. Do they exist for you? Or do they remain in potential, unrealized, unshaped, half alive? You may never have considered that the universe waits for you to witness it, not because it needs your validation, but because without your presence there is no experience. And experience is what makes the world real. Not the atoms, not the objects, not the facts, but the felt, the lived, the seen. And what you look at doesn't just become more real, it becomes more meaningful, because looking is choosing. And choosing is creating, and most people never choose consciously. They don't look, they react, they glance, they scroll their eyes, skim across the surface of life, and they wonder why nothing feels deep, why nothing feels alive. And it's because depth requires attention, aliveness requires connection, and connection requires you to stop running and truly see. And you don't need to travel far to see magic. It is in the dust, floating in the sunbeam. It is in the way someone's eyes shift when they feel seen. It's in the moment. You actually listen to yourself without judgment. And this is the quiet revolution that changes everything. Not fixing the world, but seeing it. Seeing it fully, seeing it clearly. And not just with your eyes, but with your entire being, because the world responds to your state of consciousness. And when you are angry, the world seems cruel. When you're afraid, the world feels hostile. When you are open, the world appears welcoming. And this is not illusion, it is interpretation. And your interpretation is not just mental. It is energetic, it's emotional. It's the filter through which light becomes landscape. And you are the lens, and that lens is shaped by your wounds, your beliefs, your focus, your breath. And when you change those things, the lens changes. And suddenly what was once dull becomes sacred, and what was once invisible becomes undeniable. And it wasn't the world that changed, it was you. And in changing, you changed the world. And if that doesn't scare you, just a little, then you haven't really grasped it. Because if the world exists only when you look at it, then what are you missing right now? What beauty, what truth, what possibility have you not yet activated? Because your attention was elsewhere. And how many people around you have never felt real because you never truly looked at them? Not just saw them, but looked into them with presence, with stillness, with wonder. And how many parts of yourself have remained shadows because you turned away? And this is the true tragedy of distraction, that you live in a world half imagined, half remembered, never fully seen, and therefore never fully lived. And all the while the universe is waiting for you to stop waiting, waiting for you to look. Not at your screen, not at your reflection, but at the raw, living moment in front of you. The unedited miracle of now. And in that moment of looking, something happens, something ancient and new. meets the world, and the world becomes real, not because it was fake before, but because now it is alive in you. And this is not philosophy. This is power. This is presence. This is the hidden art of being awake in a world that sleeps, and you don't need to do anything to begin. Just open your eyes, not just to light, but to meaning, not just to shape, but to soul, because the world you long for is already here. It's just waiting for you to see it, not with expectation, but with reverence, not with control, but with curiosity. And in that sacred act of seeing you bring the world to life, not just for yourself, but for everything you touch, because you are the observer, and the observed, the question and the answer, the seer and the seen, and everything begins the moment you truly look. You think the world is constant, that it waits for you, that it continues unaffected when you turn away. But what if that is only a comforting illusion? What if the world is not a stage that exists without you, but a canvas that responds to the movement of your attention? What if reality is not fixed, but fluid, and you are not merely a visitor, but the silent force that gives it shape? And when you stop looking, not only does the image vanish, but the meaning does too, because meaning is not found in things. It is breathed into them by the one who sees. And when you're distracted, when your attention is fractured, the world becomes dull, lifeless gray. Not because it is, but because you are disconnected from the light that reveals its depth. And this is why so many drift through life, not dead, but not truly alive. They see, but do not witness. They hear, but do not listen. They touch, but do not feel. And it is not because the world is empty, but because their attention is absent, and attention is the most sacred form of presence. It is not just noticing. It is entering into relationship with what is in front of you. It is saying, I see you, I allow you, I meet you. And in that meeting, something opens, something that has been waiting quietly beneath the surface of things, to be acknowledged, not just by the eyes, but by the soul. And when you give your full presence, the world reveals its hidden dimensions. A tree is no longer just a tree. It becomes ancient stillness, a mirror of your breath, a story written in silence. The face of a stranger becomes a landscape of forgotten emotion. The sound of rain turns into a conversation between sky and earth. And you begin to understand that the world is not composed of objects, but of invitations. And every moment is asking, will you be here? Will you feel this? Will you see beyond what you expect? And in that question, the boundary between you and everything else begins to dissolve. And you realize that you were never apart. You were never observing. You were always participating, but unconsciously. And now the invitation is to do so consciously, to see with the heart, not just the eyes, to hear with the soul, not just the ears, to be with what is, instead of always seeking what's next. And this shift is not loud. It is not dramatic. It is subtle, quiet, like the morning light creeping into a dark room, like the soft remembering of something ancient and sacred that you didn't know you had lost. And this is why presence is power, not power over, but power within. Because to be fully present is to step into alignment with the rhythm of reality. It is to move in harmony with the unfolding of life, not trying to bend it, not trying to escape it, but meeting it fully as it is. And when you do that, life responds not in big gestures, but in synchrony and resonance, in quiet affirmations that tell you, yes, this is it, this is real, and you are no longer a ghost walking through a dream. You are awake, aware, alive, and in that state, even pain becomes something different. It becomes cleaner, purer, because you are no longer resisting it. You are allowing it, and that permission transforms it into experience, and experience into wisdom, and wisdom into peace. Not because it removed the struggle, but because it teaches you to stand inside it with grace and clarity. And that is the gift of seeing not just the beautiful, but the whole. And when you can look at the world and see both its light and its shadow, without turning away, without numbing out, without retreating, you begin to grow roots, not into the ground, but into existence itself. And those roots connect you to everything, not as an idea, but as a living felt truth. And that truth is simple. Your attention is creation. Your gaze is the force that awakens form. And when you withhold it, the world dims. And when you offer it, the world blooms. And you realize that reality is not waiting to be discovered. It is waiting to be seen. And when you see it, you don't just change how you feel. You change what is. There will come a moment when you stop chasing answers outside of yourself, when you stop searching for meaning in external validation, and begin to realize that the world has always mirrored the state of your attention. And that moment is not loud. It is quiet, like dawn, like the breath between thoughts, like the silence just before a realization breaks open. And suddenly you understand that all along it wasn't the world that needed to be fixed or explained or conquered, but your own way of seeing it. Because seeing is not passive. It is an act of creation. And what you see reflects who you are not in theory, but in experience. Because a fearful mind will see danger everywhere, and a grateful mind will find wonder in the cracks of the pavement, and a curious heart will uncover mystery even in the most ordinary routines. And you begin to suspect that perhaps everything has been communicating with you all along the wind. The eyes of strangers, the timing of events, the way a thought rises in you, just as something outside seems to respond. And this is not magic, but awareness. It is not fantasy, but sensitivity. The sensitivity to see connections where others see chaos, to feel life where others feel emptiness. And it doesn't make you special. It makes you awake. And to be awake is to live in the real world, not the one built from assumptions, but the one that unfolds moment by moment through your attention. And when you grasp this, even for a second, you understand why presence is the highest form of love. Because it brings others into being. It says, I see you. I am here with you. I am not looking past you. I am not rushing through you. And in a world starving for recognition, your presence is medicine. It heals in ways words cannot. Because presence communicates truth. And truth is what we all long to feel. And when you give it to the world gives it back. And you realize you were never separate, not from the sky, not from the pain of others, not from the movement of the stars, because what you look at, you become part of, and you've been part of it all along, but forgot, because your mind was elsewhere, building timelines and identities and futures that never came, and pasts that never fully left. And that forgetting is the root of suffering, the belief that life is elsewhere, that meaning is tomorrow, that connection is conditional. And yet the truth was always simpler. It was here now, waiting for you to slow down, to soften your gaze, to breathe. And when you do that, the veil lifts and the world becomes intimate. Not just close, but part of you. And in that intimacy, you begin to feel again, not just react, not just perform, but feel as if every sensation was sacred, as if each moment was unrepeatable, because it is. And this is what makes life precious. Not its duration, but its immediacy. And if you keep waiting for the world to become more beautiful before you notice it, you'll miss it. You'll miss the way light bends through your window in the morning. The way someone's laughter can break your chest, open the way your own breath returns to you after a long silence. And you'll miss yourself, not the version others see, but the one that exists only when you are fully here. And that self is not a role. It is not an idea. It is awareness itself, raw, awake, tender, vast. And when that awareness looks at the world looks back, not literally but deeply, as if some hidden intelligence acknowledges you, as if existence itself is grateful that you showed up, because when you do, you light up a piece of reality that no one else can, and that light is not yours. It flows through you, but it needs you. And this is the paradox that breaks your heart open. You are nothing but also essential. You are not the center, and yet without your presence, the center cannot be felt, because the center is wherever awareness meets the world. And when you stand in that place, even for a moment, life becomes art. Every second, a brushstroke, every glance, a note in the song of being. And in that state, you don't need to be told what matters. You feel it instinctively. You know it like a forgotten language that returns the moment you stop pretending you forgot. And in that knowing, you begin to live, not just survive, not just exist, but live with full weight, with full heart, with full presence, and you will lose it again and again. Because forgetting is part of being human. But now, you know the way back, and it is not far, it is not hidden. It is as close as your next breath, as near as your next glance. And when you return, everything returns: the color, the depth, the wonder, the meaning. And you remember once again that the world was never out there. It was always within you, waiting to be seen, waiting to be loved, waiting to be brought into being by the simple, sacred act of your attention. And when you give it that attention fully, honestly, with reverence, the world is born again through your eyes, and it becomes real, not as a place, but as a living presence. And that presence is the miracle you've been seeking the whole time.